Hello and welcome to the Venus Project UK Supporters Show. I'm Aiden Fry.
I'm Tom Hockney.
And I'm Liudas Koncakivskij.
Great. We've all come together this week because we're going to talk to you guys about how to manage new information and shifting values within yourself. Or we're going to try and explain how this happens. Basically what we're going to do is we're going to just kind of talk about how getting into the Venus Project and learning about different things and trying to change our own value systems has affected our lives and ways that we think we might be able to do better or worse, and try and pass some advice on all that kind of stuff.
Hey, and first of all, we're going to be listening to a video by Jacques Fresco on depression and self-image. It's going to last 15 minutes.
Yeah, just to give this a little intro, so this is a video that for me kind of helped me a lot when I was in the first couple months of learning about the Venus Project, because you're getting bombarded with all these amazing new ideas, and it goes through the phase what people call of waking up, and you start seeing the amount of waste and the amount of bad things that are happening in the world truly for the first time, and this video just kind of helped me with that kind of stage of where I was, and I think it's a really good video, so this is just something that I pulled out. I hope everyone likes it.
The discussion today is about depression. There are many people that have been depressed for many years, and I get lots of letters, and sometimes they say that I found no meaning in life, no purpose, and you pulled me out of it. I get a lot of letters like that. So that's the only thing I can say. It's not due to genetics. If it was due to genetics, I couldn't pull them out. Does that make sense to you? Now, what is depression? If you live vicariously through another person, let's say you rely on that person entirely, you live and that person dies, you lose your identity. Because you put your identity in another person, which isn't a good thing to do. That's a kind of dependency, you know what I mean? So, that's part of depression, a little bit of it. The rest is loss of identity. And you can lose your identity if you're brought up with a philosophy of life that doesn't reinforce you. If you're brought up with a set of values, do the right thing and everything will work out all right. And if it doesn't work out all right, you become depressed because you lose predictability. Is that clear? If you have predictability about yourself and other people, you can anticipate certain things. But if you have no answers, if you look for answers in your own mind, it isn't exposed enough. There's not enough in schools that give you a way of thinking so you can solve problems. Because it isn't that they don't want to, they don't have it. They've never found a way of thinking that can solve problems. That's why when the businessman retires, he may become depressed because he has no game to play. All his life, say a guy that owns a jewelry store that sells jewelry, and every sale makes him feel good. Then he retires. And he has nothing anymore. He has no identity except sales of jewelry. Do you understand? That's gone. What follows is depression. There are some dogs that have been depressed due to they had a very close relationship with their master. When the master dies, they sat next to the master and wouldn't go away and bark at anybody that would try to take him away. Because their full identification was as a team with their master. They had no identification when the master died. They had no way of looking at it. The difference between humans and most animals don't fear death. They don't even know there is such a thing. But they move away from animals that are larger than they are. That's a reflex. But they don't know what death is, nor do they think of it. So far, any questions? Okay. So a person that asks themselves questions, why did my wife leave me? And they can't figure it out because everything they've done was pleasing. And they don't understand it. That is not necessarily a logical question. Your wife may have left you for many different reasons. That she likes a guy tall with blonde wavy hair, or stocky, or whatever. And if you don't meet that image, she might leave you. The assumption that she won't leave you is what can depress you. Your assumption about the world, surely they won't have another war while they're having a war now. You can't say that. You can say, I'd like to see peace on earth, so you work toward it. But if you hope there's peace on earth, you might get depressed by the next war. See, when people say to me, when will the Venus Project be built? The honest answer is I don't know. I don't even know if we'll get there. But I can't accept what I see, so I try to intervene. Intervening, does that mean we'll have a better world? Not necessarily. Whatever you get is what you get. Do you understand that? The assumptions, surely people can all see the logic of a one global society. No, they can't. That's a major problem. So you use different techniques to try to get them oriented toward that. Okay, so what is depression and how do you get rid of it? If you're depressed, it means you're looking within yourself for answers, and you can't get that. How did I get it? I didn't find it in psychology books at all. Here's how I got it. I sat down and I said, what is depression? I said, I don't know. How can I know what it is? But a depressed person always seems to have a low self-image. Do you know what that means? I'm not getting anywhere in life. I'm not respected. 3 girls left me, whatever it is. It's a low self-sufficiency to start with. Now, instead of looking for the girl of your dreams, you try to make her. You know what that means? Educate her in whatever way you can. Doesn't mean it'll work perfectly, no. But it'll work better than you doing nothing. Do you understand that? Therefore, depression is not only loss of self-image, they have none. The guy finds himself in the Marines and he wants to be successful in the Marines, and that can't bring success. Unless they give you medals and everybody pats you on the back. That's your self-image. I made it, you can say. Or an actor that does a theater actor that acts before an audience, a live audience, and they applaud after. That makes him feel good. A movie, he doesn't know. If he works in a movie, he doesn't know that people are going to applaud. Do you understand that? Therefore, he could encounter depression. Anybody that does any routine, a job, a jeweler, a plumber, an artist, a painter, if they don't get reward for their painting, like you're a genius, you're good creative, that makes them go on painting. But when people say, what the hell is that supposed to be? If they paint because they like to paint, that's much better if that occurs. If you go for a walk because you like to go for a walk, not because the doctor told you to go for a walk every day, at least a half hour. But if you don't do it because you want to do it, if you go out for a walk through the country and you smell the trees and you look around and you're pleased by that, do it. If it depresses you going for a walk, you have to restore the self-image. In most instances, there is no self-image. So you have to give them a self-image. You have to talk about a lot of things. The person says, gee, I didn't know that water became ice suddenly. I thought it was gradually it became ice. Well, whatever it is, if you expose them to different branches of science and they begin to find answers that satisfy them, their self-image grows. But if you make a Lutheran of a person and says, have faith in God, He'll look after you, if you put that faith in somebody you can't see or touch, it may carry you through. Because you know there's somebody up there that loves you, even though nobody does. That there is somebody up there. That helps some people. But it's not genuine help. Do you understand? Because he says to the minister, what did I do wrong? If you believe in right and wrong, you can get depressed. I must have done the wrong thing. It isn't the wrong thing that you do. It's a less valid thing that you do. It's a less appropriate thing that you do. Do you know what I mean? Not wrong. If you work on something, snap out of that depression. Have faith in yourself and confidence. Well, they might fall, gee, you sound great. But that doesn't take away the self-image. You don't take away the self-image, you add to it. You understand what that means? Whatever the person is. They only have no self-image. They don't know who they are, so they want to take, if you're in pain, that's different. I'm not talking about that. If you have a tumor growing in your lungs and you can hardly breathe, that's something else. That's not depression. That's physical disability. But if you have your health and you feel like you're learning something every day, don't ever assume that you can fix something too. You can try to fix it. I'm going to try to fix it. If that doesn't work, you come at it another way. If that doesn't work, say, I can't handle it. I need more information in that area. That's what self-confidence is. The more genuine information a person has in certain areas, people that do feel, I can't get up before 100 people and say something because I worry about whether I'll goof and they'll laugh at me, you know. Here's how you handle that. You never talk to people to win approval. You talk to people to inform. If you were in a building, you were in the hallway, and a big beam fell on fire, you can go in for 1,000 people, say exit as fast as you can, there's a fire, and you don't feel bad about it. Because what you're saying is essential to their well-being. But when you gamble and you say, I don't believe in God, at a church meeting, they can all say, what? You know, they're not going to say, how do you account for all this? They don't even do that. If they don't do that, there's no bridge. You have to build a bridge. Even a religious person, when they get a window crank and they crank it, the window doesn't open, they take it back to the company. They need verification. When they buy something, the guy says, if you buy this window, it's hurricane proof because it's a sheet of plastic between two sheets of glass, so you can't smash it with an object. And you have to give the person with a low self-sufficiency a high self-sufficiency by giving them a direction, or her, so they don't concentrate on themselves. I've been working all these years and I have nothing to show for it. Did you assume that you would have something? What you have to do is engage in self-image and asking questions. Why am I depressed? Why do I feel insufficient in the crowd? Because I'm hoping the crowd will like what I say. I don't give a shit. If they believe the earth is flat and I find out it's round, I enjoy telling them it's round. If they refuse it, that's their problem, not mine. But if you feel you are unsuccessful in presenting an idea, the assumption that you will be successful is depressing. Do you understand that? That's what makes depression. When you do something and nothing happens. When you row a boat, it doesn't move. If you can get in a boat but you don't know how to use the oar and it doesn't move, you get depressed. When you pull on the string and the motor doesn't start, what the hell, you pull it on until it does start. Or you learn that you might have to change the spark plug. It might have a shorter gap or a longer gap, and you bring the gap closer together so you have a spark. If you don't know those basic things, you can kick the lawnmower. We tend to project living human characteristics into things. Sometimes if your binoculars don't work, you throw them on the couch. You know what I mean? because you get mad at the binoculars. You give it a personality. God damn it, you should work. I paid $40 for it. That's why it should work. No, you paid $40 and it doesn't work. So you take it back. Or you leave it until you go into town again. But throwing it on the couch or the floor doesn't make it work. Sometimes, if there's a loose wire in your TV set, you kick the set and the wire, it'll go on again. And so sometimes that carries on that type of value system. I think I covered everything related to depression. It's a low self-image, or no self-image, or looking for justice. If you give them something to do that they identify with, not something that you like, something, talk to them about Venus Project, work on it, talk to other people, then they feel they're doing something. If other people don't understand them, they might feel disappointed. What they're disappointed in is their inability to make contact with other people. So it takes practice and error and mistakes. When I first walked over to Klan people, so why are you beating up the black guy? He didn't do anything to you. They just said a nigger lover from the north. They did not hear that, nor could they hear that. Do you understand? So if you talk to a depressed person and you show them what it is, so they know what's wrong with them, they don't have a self-image. How do you get a self-image? By learning new things. By learning things that take you out of the old value system.
Well, I don't know now what to say because I've noted basically the timestamps or time stomps, whatever the fuck people call them, and I've actually noted down certain things that he said. There's very interesting certain suggestions where he says you gain a self-image by learning new things. That kind of stuff. It sounds pretty simple, but obviously, if you ask me in depth about it, I'd be mute because what the hell do I know about having self-image?
Something that stood out to me during that was when Jacques said, "Don't speak for approval." And to me, because I watched that video about a year ago, that was really significant information for me, because I found that in a lot younger years of my life, I often spoke for the approval of others, and then when consciously trying to not do that, it changed a lot of my behavior.
Yeah, me too. I think it's not just and it's not just even just speaking. It's I have a similar thing with other people's opinions of me. It's not really that. It's more my opinion of myself. Say if you're talking about a skill area, say as a guitar player, I play for my opinion of myself and I enjoy doing it. If you know what I mean, that experience. I don't play guitar for other people and to get that feedback loop.
Well, it's the same. I can only reinforce what you guys said already, but in essence, the whole speaking for approval, there's many things that he actually talks about. One, for approval, anything, essentially, so far as I gather, seems to be not such a good idea, because as you keep going, it's as if you're on a chain reaction of, I just love to make people laugh. Well, a whole bunch of Nigerians with their type of background all of a sudden prop up against you, and your jokes just simply don't work. The culture is not there, the understanding is not there, the TV they watch is not there, the music they listen to is not there, political leaders, friends, whatever. And so all of a sudden, and this guy said that, silence. All of a sudden, it's that sort of comical cricket situation, but it's not your fault, nor is it theirs. It's just this complete miscommunication. So, again, if you do that for approval, yeah, you're going to be in trouble. Or at least that day, you're definitely not going to have too much fun. But the Venus Project, the way it relays information, the way it gives information, it just basically tries to give you a simple manifesto of replace all of this stuff with understanding. Understanding that they are, in fact, from another part of the world, that another person may be, in fact, cursing at you with words you've never even conceived of because perhaps their tire blew, or he or she got shouted by their boyfriend or girlfriend. That gives a lot of insight, these kinds of videos and lectures and people now, that you communicate with.
And if you're speaking for approval, then to me that means you're trying to reflect their values, and with that you can't really progress. So people with like values of, say, competition. If I'm speaking for their approval, I'm going to be using language they use. I'm going to use examples that they're familiar with. Whereas if I'm speaking to inform, as Jacques also says, then I'll try and kind of question their values and their ideas, but I'll try and do it in a manner that they'll be receptive to. So it's trying to find that balance between kind of allowing people to question themselves and obviously question yourself, but not kind of having them reject you and reject these potentially extreme ideas, because we want good communication.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like kind of emotion and stuff comes through when you're expecting your words to have a certain effect, but they have a different effect.
So true.
And it's very interesting, the idea of expectation as a human like characteristic, because like I initially came across and started really thinking about expectation maybe 4 years ago doing music, and doing music psychology is mostly about expectation, and the whole point of, well, a very large part of why music is good to people is because it's predictable, and so you can expect something to happen and it does, and you can go, yes, I like that. It tends to be if you get it, and the more you like that, as long as it has like a bit of variation, it tends to be a song that you like more. So, and that's all down to value system within music. So like the value system within, say, house music is that roughly 127 BPM, straight 4 kick drum most of the time. That's the kind of value system, or it's really what defines a genre of music, which is it kind of some base rules around which music happens. And to allow that type of expectation on people is good. But what happens if you play some like house music to someone from South America who's never listened to electronic music before? Like the value system's not there, so they won't understand it. And that's kind of like an analogy of what the same kind of thing that we're talking about when we're talking to people, say, about the Venus Project and ideas, and the way that values can affect people.
Man.
Did you guys see what I was going with that? Did you understand what
I absolutely did. A lot, actually, and a lot. I mean, I didn't even know how to, for instance, to give you an example of, breakdance or b-boying. It does rely on that. The whole expectation, it's so much even bigger. The emphasis on expectation is really quite high, because it turns out, or so far with my experience with it, if you can predict the beat, or better yet, if you can be so intricate as to actually remember a specific effect of a certain rhythm or music, then you can make a move so much more more individual than any other person can achieve by just following a beat. 1, 2, 3, 4, and maybe like I don't know, like some kind of a freeze or pose at the snare or whatever have you. So it's that much more sort of individualized, if you will. So yeah, I can completely agree with what you're talking about, and that, I mean, that's the thing. It's people praise them sort of their skill for predicting, or rather remembering, a specific type of a beat, and then being able to move to it in regards to. Yeah, I can see exactly what you were talking about expectation.
And like it's strange because it affects so many people. Like you were saying that, I was talking about house music, but then as you were explaining that, I just got an image of Strictly Come Dancing, and like salsa versus like foxtrot and stuff. It's just different rhythms and different predictabilities, different value systems within that kind of 4 minutes of a song.
Yeah.
So yeah, being predictable kind of is a good reinforcement, but really where this was kind of going was where you try and there was a good quote actually that Jacques said in there. I wrote it down. Oh yeah, surely everyone could see the logic in one global civilization. And if with that kind of mindset, if you start talking to people when you get shut down, and you will, like it's gonna hurt.
Yeah.
Whereas if you kind of start with, well, it's just me. If I can spread a bit of information to one other person, that's good. Like, if you know, you're gonna work up from where you are rather than think of where you want to be and then try and work backwards.
Yeah. I mean, I remember a lot of kind of social rejection regarding kind of my expectations of going into a room basically and starting a conversation and be like, we can have a resource-based economy and global peace. It's actually like scientifically speaking, we have the technology, and people are like, yeah, well, human nature, war, free will, competition, and it's just my expectation wasn't there that they'd kind of be so reluctant to study these new things, and then there was first the expectation that they'd be receptive to the information, and then secondly the expectation that they'd be interested enough to study it themselves. But what actually happened was a lot of it was kind of half-assed comments putting me down and not actually wanting to discuss it at all. And because I wasn't really involved in anything community-wise with the Venus Project, I was kind of on my own. I had no one else to talk to. Like, I had no points of contact or friends on Facebook or anything like that who also knew about it. So this was my only really outlet regarding the Venus Project, regarding this kind of discussion. And I got really bad responses, basically, really underwhelming as to what I hoped for. So yeah.
Yeah, I can identify with precisely the same thing. It's that feeling. The best I can say is the feeling that I got when I actually talked about this, or rather, got rejected, is the same when I got when my ex left me. It's that sort of like in your very solar plexus, like you feel a stabbing sort of motion going through your core. You're like, fuck, I'm dying a little bit. It's just essentially you're trying to, share this great idea with everybody you know, and anybody you know. And obviously, the better your friend or the better identification you have with that specific friend, the more you will try to tell them that, no, seriously, you have to understand, this is such a great idea. And the less informed you are, the more of a deeper hole you are digging for yourself. And that is what I've learned through, just by essentially, the friend dropped me. Or, it wasn't aggressive or anything. It was just me trying to essentially say to the guy, look, robots would be cleaning the toilets. You wouldn't have to be going through the, coal mines, and everything would be taken care of by technology, and, all of that stuff. And you'll go and learn, and you'll be able to just produce music and enjoy good food and just sleep enough time. How many times does that happen, right? During the workday. So I'm going on, and I'm not sure, but it's just at that one point there was that breaking point where he started saying things and suggesting words that I knew I messed up. That's actually what I said on the phone. I said, oh shit, if that's the way you talk, then I completely messed up. That's it. I literally failed to deliver the information to you in such a way that you would understand, and I can see very little chance of you recovering the curiosity level to actually go back onto it and study. And that's what happened. Increasingly words like propaganda started appearing, describing my way of explanation, and just, if it's not supported by fact, then the person is just throwing your opinions. And that's all, unfortunately, from a man who, just didn't watch anything. I think he said he watched the first certain number, I don't remember, 15 or 20 minutes or what have you, of Paradise or Oblivion, and he said he didn't like the way it was made. So no information, nothing in regards to what was said in it. It's just, I didn't like. It's as if, you know what I mean? It's as if somebody hands you a schematic saying, look, let's fix the world, and you say, I really fucking don't like the texture of the paper, it just feels wrong in my hand. It's that, what I heard. So, and it just, as time got on, the gap got bigger, and obviously I learned my lesson. Learn more before you actually start to speak to people. That is really the key so far.
Yeah, I kind of found, like, well, to start off with, I was very, very vocal with my friends, and like loads of stuff on my Facebook wall and just like posting tons of stuff like, yeah, come on guys, come on, come on, come on, come on. And like basically I actually got like comments like, I'm removing you from my newsfeed and stuff like that, just because like people were getting annoyed with me and just like.
Sure.
So it kind of eventually like I've figured out what the one or two people that I can talk to some things with, but basically I don't talk to a lot of my kind of friends that I've grown up with about a lot of these stuff unless they show some sort of interest first. If someone like one of my friends came up to me the other day like, oh, so I read a little bit about the Venus Project, and I was like, that's cool. I didn't ask you to do that or anything. You just did it, and I was like, that's cool. Let's talk about it. But like someone else comes over and goes like, yeah, let's go to the pub or something, or, you know, and I'd just be like, okay, well, no, I don't go. I haven't been to the pub in a long time, but that's another thing. But I guess that's it as well. Like, as I was kind of getting into it, and as I was learning more about these different things, like, I found myself like behaving differently. I basically stopped going out on like, you know, Friday, Saturday nights out. I'll like go out to a cinema or something in the day, or I just do something different apart from constantly going out and getting drunk, which is kind of what there is to do around here.
Oh, by the way, don't misunderstand. We are not saying that your lifestyle is wrong or should be diminished or should be deemed foul. It's essentially question the use of it. That's it. Just question everything you do. Why do I put on slippers this way? Is this what my grandma taught me? And she said that if I place the knife upside down, maybe the boogeyman is going to get my asshole when I sleep. You know, it's just these kind of things. Just question. That's it. There's nothing to do with good or bad.
It's true. That's it. I don't like my friends any less. I just don't go out anymore. I try and do other things with them and stuff like that. Just because I don't have the value of going out. If you know what I mean. It's just not fun to me anymore. And
Sure.
so that's just something that has come to me. And so I do things like this, or you know, I'd rather sit down and read a book or watch a documentary or something, and actually use my precious time off, because I work 5 days a week. Like, I don't have a lot of spare time. I'd rather not like spend the entire night on Friday and then waste the entire day on Saturday with a hangover and just like.
So would you say then your values underwent sort of a replacement? Because remember, if I'm not sure, obviously it may be talked about in the second part, but when Jacques talks about you can't take away a person's self-image because they're left in midair. You have to replace it with something. So that something, what was that something instead of Friday nights and drinking and boozing and the hangovers? What was that something for you?
I guess it's education and the Venus Project. Really, like that's the kind of time what I do in those times now. I tend like there's that, and then I've started just doing actual like little hobbies and stuff in the day and stuff, and like really trying to make use of my Saturday, because like it's my time off finally. So like I'd like to read books or something, or I have an aquaponics system that I'm kind of mid setting up, and just doing little bits and pieces and just basically trying to learn as much as I can. And yeah, you're right, it is like I wouldn't tell someone to stop going out. I would say find something else, you know what I mean? If you have something else which is more interesting, do that for you, and like be honest with yourself of what you get most out of a night that you hardly remember, or something else. Like, then like it's down to you, and it is down to building, and it is down to like what interests you. Because what I do in my spare time isn't necessarily interesting for everyone else, and what everyone else wants to do isn't necessarily interesting for me.
I'd just like to reinforce the education point that Liudas made, which was basically kind of I had the expectation that people would respond to me like they respond to people like Jacques Fresco when I see him talking in videos, like really receptively and really well kind of thing, and I tried to kind of replicate his speech patterns and the way he communicated, because he was kind of the main source. Well, he was the main source of information regarding the Venus Project for me. When I talked to my friends about it, I didn't have all the knowledge kind of stored in there that Jacques does, really. And then when I was asked questions about human nature, I could only really give examples that I could remember from what I heard Jacques say. And by that time, I hadn't studied behaviorism, I hadn't studied genetics, or very much psychology. And I genuinely sounded quite flimsy. And where one of my friends did say that, he basically said, how do you know that what you believe in isn't just, you know, a conspiracy nut? And genuinely, I thought to myself then, you know what, I actually don't, because I'm not 100% on all these things. I don't think there's competition in human beings inherently, but I can't explain why in enough detail. And for me, that conversation stagnated for about a year, and during that year, I really studied human behavior and genetics, because it really fascinated me, and it seemed to me to be a really crucial kind of subject area to learn, because it always popped up in conversation. So whether I was talking about, you know, what capabilities or what opportunities humanity have for the future, the question was always, you know, what can we actually do with human nature? You know, can we have an environment without competition? That was almost always the first question. So anyway, like a year later, the kind of same conversation actually came up on a night with the same person, with the same two people. And I was able to direct the conversation how I wanted it, and the way so that we were each asking questions to each other. And it was really productive. And I got through quite a lot. I could explain things, and I was recalling kind of data, and really useful is the ability to recall studies which are relevant to your explanations. So to say, you know, not all psychopaths are violent, and then to be able to say, okay, here's a study that shows this, and here's another study that shows this, that like is really reinforcing for yourself. Well, it was for me anyway, and for just the conversation in general. So I would say that educating yourself in specific areas helps a lot with communicating with people, for both kind of your self-confidence and the way you can present yourself, the way you can present information, and the way you can also kind of influence the conversation to get out of it what you want. And that is what, you know, them questioning themselves and them asking you interesting questions as well. So yeah.
Nice. Yeah, it's essentially what you make it sound as if what Fresco wants in the first place. You know, see, this is the thing. I'm just curious how anybody would actually perceive it on the radio, you know, in regards to us actually. So far, as I hear us talking to each other, we make out Fresco to be our idol. And but actually, my friend had pointed out that I deem Jacques to be some sort of an idol for me. And that sort of bugged me. That really got my back up. I'm like, no, he's not. No, you know, because she really made it sound as if Jacques is some kind of god for me. And I'm like, Jesus, if that's the way I refer to him, then, you know, obviously I'm going to kind of repel quite a few individuals if they see that trait as well. So I started, you know, sort of looking into the subject a little more, and I love it because in more than not, you know, be it seminars or talks or lectures he gives, he usually points it out that I don't want people to follow me. I want them to hear me out, and if it makes sense, do it. If it not, get off. And, you know, to me, it just sounds the friendliest thing that anybody can say to you. It's as if, you know, yeah, I've got this interesting little trinket, or I've got this interesting little project, or a book, or whatever. You know, nobody's forcing you. However, should you wish to join me, most likely we'll have not even, you know, more fun together, but obviously we'll be able to have two viewpoints, whereas me by myself, I'd just be able to have one viewpoint. So it's just like friendly invitation, you know, and obviously, again, nobody's forcing you. So if you got objections that are too much for you to get over your own, whatever, biases, beliefs, or inabilities to ask certain questions, then it's better to, I don't know, maybe take some time off and readjust. And then you can come back and ask stuff about whatever, sex, religion, and money, and environment, whatever, you know. Whereas before, perhaps you would just fall into these emotional attacks and, no, you cannot have a circular city. It's beyond architecture, you know, or something like that.
Well, when you're speaking to someone else, like what you're trying to do is bridge the gap between your two value systems, yeah? So that you can both understand and communicate and cooperate, essentially.
Yeah.
And if you get to a person who, like, their starting point is just so far away that it's impossible to bridge that gap, like, it's better to just recognize that before you start building, rather than, like, have a bridge that falls over halfway and, you know, the traffic flying into the water or something.
It's true, yeah.
And there's a certain point where at certain times, and it's something that, like, you'll get with practice. I think Jock says it in there, like, you make mistakes, you make errors, we've all done it, and you slowly get better, and no one ever, like, gets good. You just slowly getting better and better and better, hopefully. Yeah. Tom?
I was going to say something that Jacques said, well, a couple of things that I actually disagreed with the first time he says them. I think I agree a bit more now. Well, the main one was, if you don't think something's worth your time or energy, then don't commit yourself to that thing. Don't commit yourself to, say, trying to convince to an extreme racist or someone like that. You know, the logic of equality, that kind of thing. Whereas that time could be better spent explaining to, like, 2 or 3 people who are more receptive to the ideas, maybe scientists. The Venus Project, that time could be better well spent. But I used to kind of think, I know I had a bit of an arrogant approach to it. I was all head on, face everything, and try and convince everyone, and, you know, that kind of thing. And I did that for a while, but then it got really draining anyway for me. And if you can genuinely do that, then go for it, is my advice. You know, if you think you can talk to everyone about it and face all of the kind of miscommunication head on and have it not affect you, then go for it. But I couldn't, and I don't think it should be really expected for supporters to have to do that either. You know what I mean? There's quite a lot of pressure. I kind of felt a bit of pressure anyway to start with regards to kind of convincing people and talking to people about it, because, well, let's face it, there is a bit of pressure because it's a pretty big issue.
Jacques says a number of times that, like, I think it's one of the most inspirational ones that I got from his Stockholm talk. Like, right at the end, he goes, like, it'll only work if you go out and speak to people, and, like, it's down to you to do stuff. And that kind of thing is really good for giving people a kick to say, get on, let's actually do something. And that's what it did for me. I watched that. That was, like, the 3rd documentary that I watched from him, and I was like, okay, I'm going to email them and see what I can do. I think that was literally the timeline. So you do need that, but at the same time, I think, Tom, with regards to having that pressure to convince everybody, I don't think that's really what Jacques is actually saying there, although it might get interpreted that way. Because most people, well, in the UK and stuff, we come from an idea of democracy and stuff, and so you're going to think, okay, if you're on board with this, and there's got to be a world government, or not, sorry, a global system, then everyone has to be on board, basically. And so you kind of put that pressure on yourself of, okay, well, we need, like, more than 50% of people to be on board with this kind of thing. So you think, oh God, we need to convince everyone. But, like, really, if you're looking at the timeline of what the Venus Project is, like, going for, and kind of what the next initial steps are going to be with the first city and stuff like that, is that it doesn't need to be everyone on board right now. We don't need everyone on board. We need a certain amount of resources so that the first city and the movie can get made. And those things will help us propel kind of, like, the level of kind of exposure and people who are interested in this much, much higher. And, like, putting effort and stuff, if we can, into those kind of projects will eventually give us better kind of goals. So if we end up with a couple cities that are actually up and running and people can actually go there and go, wow, this actually works, then you're going to instantly convince a lot more people, than rather than kind of putting the pressure on your own shoulders to go and explain this whole thing to people, when right now there's very little that's physically built, if you know what I mean. You can point to documentaries and stuff, but there's nothing actually that, apart from Jacques, for their actual, I can't remember what it is.
Research center.
Research center, yes, in Florida, which is a bit far away. I haven't gone there. I know, Liudas, you have, and I'm not jealous, but whatever the non-bad word is for jealous.
Well,
Actually, no, I'm happy because you can tell me all about it. That's it. There we go.
That's a very nice way to go about it.
I'm happy for you.
Sure. Well, yeah, I mean, I do have to just disagree by one thing, which is that that sort of pressure that Tom, you were talking about. The pressure I, for instance, don't even feel anymore. But actually, just before I even go on to that, I'd like to just say, anybody who is actually interested in, anybody who really does feel that, yes, there is too much poverty and quote-unquote bad language injustice around the world, and yes, cops are beating the blacks more than they beat the whites, and yes, women get paid still less in 2014, by the way, than men in the same positions with the same amount of tasks. And, you know, there's starving continents and so on, and people build nuclear armaments, and we got Fukushima to worry about. Yeah, you get the picture. So if you do actually come on to this, and you do think that, yeah, you know, I could get behind something like this, some project which actually gives me not the sweet nothings in my ear of, oh, just believe in yourself, it's within you, or hope for a better humanity, which, by the way, to any of you who are listening and are interested, please look up, you know, there's a very nice 2-minute video, essentially, of Jacques talking about these kind of things, the scientific versus religious approaches of hoping for things and actually doing stuff. But essentially what I'm saying is, you know, give yourself at least 3 to 4 months or something, like just something, you know, look up an average of a course that is a requirement. Like, what is the requirement for, let's say, an introductory course in IT to complete, or an introductory course in anything to complete? You know, give the timeline, or at least allow some time to really sink your teeth into this subject, because it is a broad piece of knowledge. I can't, you know, emphasize that enough. I mean, the amount of content that exists that needs to be read and understood, and actually the latter means even more, the understanding of it. Because once you understand something, once you get the principle of it, not just the mere words or the verbal sort of rehashing of everything Jacques or everything Roxanne or anything that Joel, essentially these are the people who live in the research center in the Venus Project. You know, it's not parroting of information, it's actually understanding something that is behind of why the engineering of the environment, why the circular cities, why the statements about mechanistic approach to behavior and so on and such. Once you get that, you'll be able to start making examples and start making anecdotes and jokes, and your friend will be able to get you more. It's maybe to one person it's a drinking joke that may appeal, to another it's a fishing one, or I'm just saying it's these lame little examples, but they will get along as more you sink your teeth into the subject. And the second thing I have to say is about this whole confidence and how it's a lot of pressure to speak to people. I actually have to disagree completely. And I have to disagree with only one thing, which is it's not pressure on one account, because to me personally it's eagerness. I don't even have in me anymore to not be honest about, well, anything. I mean, any person dyes their hair, I have to ask them, why did they do that? Oh, just because. You know, care to expand? I can't let it go anymore. It really is difficult. Obviously, I can see when a person already wants to stab me, so I back away. But usually it doesn't get to those examples. But I do have to ask certain things, and I get to survey them, so to speak. Survey their outlook about governments and the current political stance, if they even want to talk about that. If they don't, fine. Again, we all realize that it's not everybody's cup of tea. But if they do, I will absolutely go in depth, and I will try to deconstruct and really detailed understanding, to get the detailed understanding of a person's view on life, relationships, tires, and traffic, and police, and war, and everything else. And then perhaps, just perhaps, there's a chance to actually get somewhere and to suggest some piece of video which all of a sudden they are a lot more welcoming to than they may have been an hour before. So what I'm talking about is putting yourself out of the comfort zone. Essentially, yeah, it's the same step you have to take when you first tremble and shake when you want to speak to a girl. It's the same thing you have to do when you're looking down a ramp and you have to go there with a skateboard or whatever the hell, yeah, you tremble like shit, you know. Everything jiggles around a bit. But after that, who knows? The outcome is what matters. Then you get to decide whether or not your technique works or not. I hope anybody understands that.
I think what would be pretty useful if we could give examples of how we've kind of adapted what we talk about or how we talk to fit certain people's values and expectations as to get across kind of relevant information to the Venus Project better. Because someone gave me an example of how they talked to someone who was a kind of military advocate, and how they kind of talked about war veterans and, oh, isn't it a shame that these war veterans aren't getting paid very much, or something like that. And
Sure.
that example really helped me kind of visualize how I could do it
Yeah.
as well. So I was wondering if you two have any examples of that.
Actually,
well.
I do. And the one I do is, to me personally, is really quite, well, the hell with it. It's old language. I would say beautiful. And it's in regards to a Muslim lady, essentially. We're in college. We're talking, university, whatever. We're talking about, the belief system that she has, which is essentially she is a Muslim lady and she has these views. And I asked her, what is your interpretation of being a Muslim? What is it, in fact, that you do that regards you as being a Muslim, as opposed to you are just a woman with this kind of supposed clothing? What's the difference? And she said, well, as a Muslim lady, it's not like I'm supposed to sort of be strict and whatnot. It's, I do follow Quran to the letter, but what it does is it encourages me to question things and to learn more. And essentially, it continued to a really nice hour conversation. But after that, the conclusion was this. I said, well, how about if you do learn, and if you do happen to stumble on information which will go hand in hand to prove that, in fact, your God does not exist, would you be willing to step on forward and keep learning and accept such a conclusion? And she says, well, I don't think I would. And that, to me, was just such a great moment, because fine, it didn't, obviously I didn't, nor was it an intention to sort of shake her belief or whatnot, but it was an intention to get some honest views on exactly how malleable or how willing to learn are you really. And that answer from that fellow student, it was just a breath of fresh air, that's all. But so essentially, yeah, I talked honestly. I didn't go around the bush, I went on straight ahead, asked questions, and to her, she seemed receptive to it. Obviously, again, survey the situation. If the person is obviously saying that, do not speak about my God, and obviously that that should be red herring, just back away.
Mm.
Yeah, I guess for me, I've already changed. I think I've got a lot more understanding of people now. I used to get incredibly frustrated with people when they had a different value system to me, or when they couldn't understand what I was saying or anything like that. I had a frustration because I blamed them. But really now kind of, because I've actually started learning about communication techniques and language and behavior and perception and all these kind of things that relate into that experience, I can now, I'm now a lot more in control, I think. You know what I mean? Much less emotional, and I don't mean emotional really, maybe irrational. I don't know, I don't like using emotional or rational as kind of opposite things, but it's helped me to understand, it's helped me to change, to change the way that I speak, so it's more understandable, and to try and get myself to be more understandable. Now I have the thing of, I'm pretty introvert, so I don't really go out and speak to people that much in kind of real life. I spend a little bit more time, I think, now on things like this, kind of like presentations and trying to present information in a more linear and concise manner rather than having fluid conversations. But I think that's just me. I do try and have fluid conversations. The best person I think I've spoken to about it in real life, apart from obviously all you guys, is my mum.
Awesome.
Like she gets it. I think she's kind of there, but like she has the oh come on guys, you know, it's a good idea. It's just understandable, and like I think because it's my mum, I'm like extra understandable with her, so we actually get some good conversations. So I think I'm trying to take that out a bit more.
Nice.
Yeah, I think the main thing for me is assessing whether someone has kind of the energy or the resources even to engage in the conversation wholeheartedly, and whether if not, then I'd recommend not pooling so much energy into it. But then if so, well, you're pretty lucky really, because I've found like in like face-to-face conversations in real life, been maybe one or two people who I've been able to genuinely talk about things and philosophize without them getting bored, without them, you know, saying, "Oh yeah, but what's the point?" and then trying, you know, going and playing video games, that kind of thing.
Sure.
Yeah, so for me, it's kind of not expecting to have these really detailed conversations and these really interesting conversations with everyone, and trying to kind of express that that excitement and that energy that you get maybe from thinking about these things and discussing these things in other ways, and maybe practical projects or joining the Venus Project community. Those kind of things helped for me, at least.
This is the thing, we talk about face-to-face conversations, but what we're doing here at Google Hangout, where's the line anymore? Because like we guys hang out every like Monday, and we do stuff throughout the week, pretty much. So like you got, and all the other guests that we've had on, like there's so many people that we have hangouts, we have TeamSpeak and stuff that I can talk to now. I'm really, it's like like we all have or are trying towards the similar kind of values, and we're all on the same kind of page, and so our discussions are kind of educational. Did you know about this? Like, what about something like this? Or like Liudas asked the questions and stuff. And I found these conversations have been like the most important to me. I think just chatting with people who are on a similar wavelength to start off with. You don't need to go, have you heard of the Venus Project? Like you're already past that. You can get into some detail, and you can really explore it, because there's a lot of stuff and there's a lot of things to explore. And it, as you said, like I think Tom, you were talking about this a little bit earlier. This is something that I found right near the start, and it was a really good thing to do, but I didn't quite understand what I was doing at the time, which was I basically started to memorize Jacques' examples.
Yeah.
Whenever, well, not memorize. I'd recall them and I'd use them a lot, and the examples are like obviously great, but I think this is what you're saying, Tom. Like, I was using the examples, but I didn't really understand the backdrop yet. So and that is where some of the conversations kind of broke down that I was having with. The second someone showed a little bit of interest, then you let them down by actually not having any information to back it up.
Sure.
Yeah, a little bit off topic, but the amount of times I've used the example of building a bridge is insane. Like, it's just it's really usable, and those like, yeah. I have a right to my own opinion. Well, I wouldn't ask you if I was going to build a bridge, how you do it if you don't know how to build bridges. Yeah.
No, you're right. And the thing is, though, I think they're great, and like I do still use them all the time. But like now, I've started doing some reading into the background topics, and like you start to get the understanding. You can then start to take the principle or whatever that you're talking about and say, where is the example that is more relevant for the person who I'm speaking to?
Right. Yeah.
And so you start getting into that behavior, which I've found to be pretty useful. It kind of it depends on how the conversation's happening, because we're kind of talking about face to face. We talked about Google Hangout, but there's also like Facebook. and like just pure text message. You could just be texting one of your friends, like you heard about the Venus Project, or a Facebook thread that like 5 people jump on, and it's all ends with people shouting and screaming. And, like the way that you're trying to speak to these, talk about these things is entirely dependent on the manner through which you're speaking. And this is another thing that I kind of have picked up going through, is that not to take too much interest in Facebook and comments, and especially things in like groups when there's hundreds of people and just people will just come in and go blah and then not even listen to your answer. They ask for something.
Also, I'd recommend as well, if you can make a comment, kind of don't put pressure on yourself to explain something in loads of depth. So if it's regarding human behavior, say, oh, well, I don't really think human nature exists, and here's my sources, link a few videos, a few lectures, them kind of things. And then it's up to them. If they're genuinely interested in the conversation, interested in learning, then they can go do it themselves. But it's not on your head to go and explain something that would literally take hours to type out in Facebook.
That's true.
And I've stressed over that before. That's the thing. I'm saying these things, but I'm the worst at it. The amount of time when I'm doing things where I shouldn't be on Facebook, not illegally, but but the amount of time that I spent like 20 minutes stressing over a comment to get it really nice and then put it in, and then the person just goes. So like, and it's again, it's the expectation that you have of yourself to be able to convey something in a media that it's so easy to misinterpret something if you're just typing stuff. Even just on your phone, like you can autocorrect to completely the wrong word, and like there's so many things that can go wrong and can get missed, like cross wires.
Actually,
yeah.
With this,
I'd like to interrupt this message
because seriously, the incredible power that the words can have, and what you said is absolutely true. This misinterpretation regarding something like interpretation and misinterpretation, if people are really interested in getting to know the language and getting to know its power in how it can influence and how you can misunderstand stuff, please do yourself a favor, read Tyranny of Words by Stuart Chase. Seriously, if we are trying to follow Jacques' example, let's share some info. So Stuart Chase or Alfred Korzybski with Science and Sanity, just invaluable information inside them. Really, just from even the beginning 5 pages that I've read about Tyranny of Words, it's incredible. It really is.
All right, guys, that's the end of our hour. It's been a great show. Thanks, Tom and Liudas, for coming along. On that last point, what we're going to be doing next week is we're going to go along the same kind of lines. We're going to have the same panel again, and we're going to look more down the education route and what you can actually do to really help yourself get through all this stuff and how to learn as much as possible. Liudas, there with the point that I'd like to just end on, with when you're saying Science and Sanity and this stuff, these are things that Jacques read, and they're all up on the recommended reading list. So if anyone has a week this week, the recommended reading list on the Venus Project's website has all the information, tons and tons of books. They're all relevant. And I believe Jacques has read them all, but I could be wrong. I know he's read a lot of them. He's read things like Stuart Chase, Tyranny of Words, and Science and Sanity, I know. And the thing is that read them and see if you come up with a different conclusion to what Jacques Fresco is saying. Because I've come through and I've read them, and they just back everything up. But anyway, that's it for this week. Thanks, guys, for coming along.
Pleasure.
Yeah. Cheers, Liudas. Aiden's shit. Liudas. The I in your name is so deceiving. And thanks for listening.
Great.